welcome everybody. Um, Today we are going to topics with taxing across various state lines in different locations. Um, Today it's me, Dominic, with Global Data Services, as well as Kelly here with Avalara. And so we'll be touching on a few pieces around that. At Global Data Services, we handle a few different things, but today we're going to be looking at our field service app. So we any kind of field service company out there that has technicians in the field, if you're using NetSuite, we can streamline the flow of data from the office out to the field to make sure the worker has and knows what they need to do. And anything they're doing out there can update NetSuite in real time. So you don't have to worry about following up and a bunch of data entry and things like that. So give me just a moment and we will get started. Kelly, I didn't really give you an opportunity to say hello, but I don't know if you want to say a couple things and I'll get our presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kelly Davis with Avalara, super excited to be here with Global Data Services and talk about how Avalara can help with your sales tax automation and compliance process. Very excited to kind of go through this with everyone here.
Perfect. And let's go here. Okay. Format on here is a little different than the Teams I'm used to, so I'm gonna have to do something real quick. Oh, there we go. So like I mentioned, we're here to look at sales tax across multiple state lines. I'm from Global Data Services. I've been involved in field services and various components for several years now. Now at Global Data Services, we're supporting the field service industry. So our software helps in a number of ways that we already kind of discussed. Specifically around inventory. So there's a few different things that our clients like to use. First is you can, if your workers have trucks that carry inventory, you can, within NetSuite and on our field service app, track what inventory, both by item and quantity, is in every truck. And then out on the job, if you determine that as a worker, you need to add various items from your truck to that job, that can all both happen from our field service app as well as be tracked. So that is, you have a job where you're doing some plumbing work and you need to get some fitting or something off of your truck. You then add that to the job, use it on the job. That can be billed. That item is now at that location. And so what you're seeing here in these images is on the left-hand side, you can see the actual truck's inventory. And then on the right-hand side, that's within the job. You are accessing that truck's inventory and adding those items to that job. There's also the potential for, if you are shipping, let's say you have clients that are in different states and you are shipping products from your warehouse to the job site, you can track that on the job. So as a worker, you shouldn't be, even though the job's scheduled for today, if that equipment's not out there, if those items are not out there, you don't want to go out there and waste your time. So this will let you monitor that, and then you can reschedule as needed. Typically, the office is also going to be monitoring that. All this information lives in NetSuite, so they're going to be on top of it. But that also keeps you in the loop. So as you can see here, you've got that same job number here on the left, on the little image to the left, gives you that location. And then you can go into the job if you open that up and see what items are in transit or already delivered. And then you can actually open up each of those items. And so the ones that are in transit, if you need to get that tracking number, you can do that, and that will help you keep on top of this. Now, I mentioned all this information lives in NetSuite. So what we're looking at here is just a quick screenshot of the bottom of the field service work order, or the field work order record. And so this is tracking what items are associated with that job. And so you can also see not only the items, not only the quantity, the units of measure, but that tracking information and that shipping status. And so that will let you be able to keep on top of where everything is, whether it's in transit or if it's finally, on site, and handle your field service in that regard. Yeah, that concludes this piece of it. I guess, Kelly, would you like to take over from here?
Yeah, absolutely. If we can go ahead and put my screen up on there that says Avalara and replace that with yours, Dominic, I think that would be great. I think a really important part about how Avalara's solution works within Global Data Service, or I should say along with Global Data Services, of that inventory tracking, is that a lot of times when tax needs to be calculated based off of the location of the job site, there's always a big question of what inventory is being used and where is that inventory being used. Because you can have it on a truck, but doesn't necessarily mean that'll be used at that job site. And so what a unique portion of the solution that Dominic brings to it is that ability to track exactly where, that address is, where that job site is. And Avalara can take that location and do a calculation to say, hey, these products were used at this location, and it can either charge sales tax or accrue use tax on those exact portions that were used on that job. And of course, all this is going to connect directly into NetSuite. So it's a great feature in that way. Let me go ahead here and let's see, Dominic, have we been able to figure out how to get the slide up or no?
I'm not seeing your option here. I believe let
me try here again, round 2. Let's see if we can try this time. Share. It is there. I think someone needs to put it onto the live screen where it's grayed out on my side or on someone's side. In that process, there we are. I see it now. Thank you. Okay. So let me go here through the slide deck here. All right. So that important part, and this is just a little bit about Avalara being around, that we've been here for about 20 years doing the sales tax automation and be able to help do calculations all across the U.S. and helping millions of customers or millions of calculations and documents, and be able to help customers be sales tax compliant across the world here. But as we kind of discussed, there's really 4 main areas that compliance is very challenging for businesses to deal with. Commerce is been happening all over the place, right? It's so much easier to sell to any place in the globe with recent developments. And of course, the government's adding more policies and more regulations attached to that. And with tax happening more online and digitally through invoices and electronic transfers, things like that, it makes it so much harder in order to make all this be compliant. And that's really where Avalara is going to be able to help. One of the most difficult parts of the sales tax calculation is figuring out where that transaction happened to. So as your field service tech is on site doing a repair or a job, we have here an example of a tax jurisdiction boundary in Colorado. So you can see based off the different shades in that orange circle that the white lines are the zip code boundaries that the post office has established in shipping mail. And lots of places are going to use that zip, or I should say, lots of software for calculating sales tax will use that zip code to calculate the sales and use tax. But as you can see here in Colorado, for example, a zip code 80111, it has up to 4 different tax rates that could apply to that transaction based off of using that zip code. And so it's not an accurate enough process. Now, when most businesses have a particular address that it's shipping to, or a particular location or warehouse that it's coming to or going to, it's somewhat easy. But when you have a field service protect that's out to a job site, and that can be anywhere, and sometimes it might be a new place where it doesn't have an address. This is where our solution to be able to go ahead and calculate using a longitude, latitude, coordinates point will always ensure that you have the accurate sales tax rate for calculating that transaction or the usage of those materials. And so this is the complexity that businesses have to deal with here in the US. And Avalara is a great solution to be able to work in that. Not only is having the right location accurate, but there's also a lot of information you have to keep updated within the system. So I see here in 2021, for example, there was over 123 tax rates and taxability updates that happened across the US, as well as sales tax holidays. Sales tax holiday is, of course, in a certain time period when a product is normally subject to sales tax is exempt for just a certain period of time, usually a weekend, but sometimes it's up to a week. And so Avalara is going to be able to track not only all those taxability changes, but all the tax rate changes for all the products and services and locations here in the US and globally, including Canada, to be able to help automate that for you so your accounting team doesn't have to maintain that behind the scenes and monitor all that. So the advantage of using Avalara is that the very first step in doing a calculation is using that address validation to be able to make sure, one, that we have a real address, and then converting that to a latitude, longitude coordinates point to be able to know what tax jurisdiction that we're going to be into. So using the sourcing rules, we know whether we need to use the sourcing of that field service job site example, or if it's going to be from where the product came from, being the warehouse that it was originally designated to. Then we'll be able to assign it to the correct taxing jurisdiction. We'll know whether or not the product that was used or the product that's sold or the services rendered are taxable within that taxing jurisdiction. And of course, we'll be able to put that on the invoice, be able to do that calculation for you, and have all the reporting needed to be able to file that sales tax return within that taxing jurisdiction to remit the sales tax. So that's the advantage of Avalara. And again, that's just for one transaction. The whole process will repeat itself within milliseconds, less than a second, to be able to keep that all up to date. A little bit more detailed example of that exact process and the in-depth process that we go into that is each example in that. So an example during a purchase, whether that is on a field service where a job site's being done or if someone is making a purchase online, we'll go ahead and validate that address to make sure that we have a correct address. We apply those sourcing rules, assign, and you see in step 3 in their Colorado example, the correct taxing jurisdictions, apply all the rules and tax code and regulations for that. If there's any exempt status for either that job, whether it's a resale of a transaction, or if it's to exempt entity, maybe that job site is a hospital or a data center where there's a certain exclusion that's offered for that particular job, we'll go ahead and make that calculation and then identify, like I said, that taxable service or product or the item that's being used in that process. Of course, it will take into account any sales tax holidays that would be possible. And then we go ahead and send that to the actual invoice to get posted, and then we remit it for the records to be able to file that sales tax return. So again, a little bit more detailed process that all this happens within less than a second, and we do it for millions of transactions across the globe. To be able to see a little bit more detailed about the insight that you'll have access to, as you can see here, based on this one item here, we have this example of the software license. We have 10 of them for a total amount of $10,000. And you can see here how they linked it to what we call a tax code. So we know exactly what that product is on our side. This entity use code is going to let us know whether there's an exemption certificate that would apply for this transaction. Whoops, let me go back, hit the wrong button. You can see we've taken that ship from and ship to location and applied the correct longitude, latitude, and also take into account the sourcing rules that go into that transaction. We then note if you have nexus and you're collecting and remitting sales tax within this particular jurisdiction, being New York, is the customer subject to tax? Again, we have no exempt entity or transaction for this, so that's going to be taxable. Then lastly, in New York, this product is taxable. So as it meets those metrics, you can see at the state, county, and any special jurisdictions, we have the tax rate that applies at each of that line level. So again, 4% within the state of New York, there's a sales tax rate of 4% in the county rate. And then there's a transit tax or transit district, but the special rate for that transit of, what does that work out to be? 0.375 cents. So a total of $8 or 8.375% is the rate that needs to be calculated there. So we have that $837.50 included on that invoice to happen right there. And again, all this happens within less than a sub-second. And using the information that Global Data Services is able to provide of their inventory check, we're able to figure out exactly what that ship from and ship to location is in a more specific solution that lots of people don't necessarily get to experience, and how Avalara will be able to work right along with them to make sure that tax is calculated each and every time correctly. So that is the portion of that I wanted to cover. So I do thank you for your time in that. Dominic, any other closing points that you'd like to make?
No, I don't think so. I think Avalara and Onsite work well together in that regard, because, like Kelly said, we're able to track where everything is, where it's shipped from, where it ships to, and then Avalara can take over and make sure that everything's taxed appropriately. So it's a great match.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.